I affirm. The negative prioritize research extraction over environmental protection. The best merging could because I have to get these actions to affirm. If he needed to be ready for research around the 1 year to answer his position. If he doesn't defend extraction, he's moving target. I can impact off transmissibility, bandwidth, actually, the or extraction, 9 response by acts many acts, limiting to 1. Eco guidance key friends gives the same ability to act the ballot. Since the topic impacts the world at large, I value global justice, meaning giving all people their due estates and connecting them must be them as part of global institution, not separate sovereign actors. Thomas Hoagie 1 writes. Global justice asks how to assess global institutional arrangements, even the world is inhabited only by states, obsolete transnational rules, multinational corporations, agencies, and NGOs gain power. Global justice makes visible how affluent countries implicate in other violence and hunger rather than bearing responsibility for such harms in the black box of their own state. This focus on international arrangements draws attention to inequalities. Pogi 2 writes. Human aids design institutions that affordably deprive people of rights, requiring institutional reforms that respect the negative duty not to impose injustice when avoiding severe poverty or slavery is possible in the imposition of institutions that perpetuates and violates human rights. Rights violations are impermissible since A. States derive legitimacy from securing rights as people only form them for rights protection. Anarchy lacks as rights protection differentiates government from its state nature. It's foundational for all state action. B. We should default to rights existing as opposed to not, since all real-world institutions presume they do, justifying every assumption around is impossible. So unless you justify why rights don't exist, we should presume they do. Since contributing to a system of inequality is equivalent to a direct rights violation, the standard is promoting global equality. Promoting global equality means giving all nations the same access to self-determination. Prefer my standard because first, equality is necessary to answer ethical questions, since excluding some perspectives could defraud epistemology that makes it impossible. Jose Medina notes. Epstein battles among competing power firms try to control given fields of knowledge, some spirits and hidden hegemon firms that marginalize subjugate knowledge and render them unqualified and unworthy of Epstein perspectives. Scholars tasked to disrupt Epstein hegemonies and mainstream perspectives by mobilizing and marginalizing that can happen to subjugate and voice the Epstein table. This precludes other firms since what we know from space is how we act and think about moral questions. Second, since borders are arbitrary, there's no legitimate basis for global inequality. Martha Nussbaum writes. The axiom where one is born is just that an accident. Any human might have been born anywhere. We should recognize humanity wherever it occurs and give its fundamental ingredients, reason, moral capacity, or first respect. Arbitrariness precludes access to other frameworks since A. It makes morality impossible to enforce. It means we don't know who owes what to whom. B. It denies any incentive to be moral since people have no reason to follow a system of random ethical rules. My thesis is that developing states deserve more than destruction. I advocate that developing countries recognize the constitutional human right to a good environment when environmental protection conflicts with resource extraction. Steve Turner explains. The human right to a good environment makes degrading the environment unlawful. It's a right to challenge such decisions in courts and tribunals. Environmental degradation can be lawful when it satisfies other basic rights, and where less degrading alternatives are not viable. In that case, the degradation must be tied to compensation in at least an equal measure benefits of targeted communities' environment. By decreasing dependence on resources in other states, affirm promotes global equality and justice since first, it stops the imperialistic north of looting that strips developing states bare, leaving them with destruction and death. Carmen Gonzalez 1 notes. Commercial mining and ranching displaced local communities, destroying social structures and economies. In North emitted 90% of the greenhouse gases during the past 150 years due to the global atmosphere is safe for industrialization, harmful byproducts. Southern countries bear a disproportionate share of the environmental consequences, including droughts and floods, conserving biodiversity essential to more than 500 million people's survival. Further, northern extraction depletes southern resources. Gonzalez 2 shows. The north of 20% of the world's population consumes 70% of the world's energy, 60% of its food, which can only be maintained through procreating the south's natural resources. Natural resources are finite in one country's overconsumption requires others. Underconsumption, local ecosystem limits have already been exceeded. In fact, northern looting plus developing states extraction increase the risk of extinction. Stephen Boyan writes. The evidence is overwhelming. We have entered the transition zone. The amount of grassland has declined from overgrazing and forest shrinking at a rapidly accelerating rate as humans impacting the environment increases other species find it difficult to survive, and human life support systems unravel. If resource consumption stays constant by 2100, humans will have consumed the entire biological product. Humans can't survive without other species, most of which would be dead by that point. The right to a good environment limits our choice by letting developing states check for and exploitation through bottom-up policies by the people, not top-down mandates from the global north. Gonzalez 3 writes. One-size-fits-all solutions that ignore local conditions, exacerbate injustice, emerging rights for a healthy environment, promote grassroots participation in environmental decision and human rights law, lets those most directly affected by environmental injustice seek redress. Top-down solutions driven by the North's agenda exacerbate injustice by reinforcing northern dominance and ignore those most affected by environmental degradation. Thus, affirm provides the only way to reduce inequality and restore justice. Second, while extraction forces developing states to model themselves after the developed, affirming has an equal chance to define their national identity. Negating forces southern states to sell themselves to slavery for aid and market inclusion, even though that directly conflicts with more national interests like the environment. This creates a hegemony of the developed. Andrew Oakley writes. Most foreign investment aid goes to countries the IMF and World Bank deboard them, mainly those in mining and oil industries, making external finance key to development, encourages external borrowing structure to produce particular policies in borrowing countries, and then becomes self-reproducing, creating more need for external borrowing forces that perpetuate even the most critical discourse, easily slips into the form and seeks to contest the emphasis on what Western development agencies think is good for agriculture and what countries lack, not what they have. This hegemony equates development with westernization. The prospect of economic growth keeps the South running on an endless treadmill. They constantly chase wealth but stay in the same place. Simon Henry writes. What keeps rich nation rich and poor nation poor is not bad luck or policies, but the ongoing legacy of colonialism and resource extraction. Plunder thinly veiled as trade capitalism simultaneously generates underdevelopment in some parts and development in others. Rich states' exploitation of poor states is possible only because the latter ruling leads gain from it and are complicit at every level, resulting in cycles of repeated exploitation. To pursue their own path, southern states must recognize human rights-based environmental claims. Burns Weston writes. Framing environmental entitlements as human rights lets rights holders assert maximal claims in society more elevated and complex laws subject to everyday revision. When we call natural resource abuse, rights infringement, environmental interests gain legal and political legitimacy, and critics gain a moral and legal beacon for assessing states' behaviors. Human rights generate political action as seen in many global conferences under the UN and regional organizations fostering provision of a healthy environment. Denying environmental rights to extraction force groups promote the very tools that keep the marginalized creating internalized oppression. This outweighs all the harms to equality because it prevents authentic resistance that can disrupt existing power structures. Paulo Freire writes. A basic element of the relationship between oppressor and the oppressed is the imposition of one person's choice upon another, the oppressed having adopted the oppressor's guidelines. Fear of freedom, which is required by conquest, not by gift, to surmount oppression, people must first critically recognize its causes, so that through transforming action they create a new situation. As long as they live in the duality, which to be is to be like, and to be like is to be like the oppressor, this is impossible. As an underview, applicants are VIs because A, the negative spread out the app from the MC and 3 required should time commitments against game over issue if he can force an answer theory and kick it, he unfairly chooses my strategy making contention of what he does. B, if he can run theory to punish my alleged abuse, I should be able to run an RPI to punish his abuse of theory, otherwise theory can't check all abuse. That's it.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Can you put some
Yeah.
Great. So, you talk about preventing imperialism of the North, right?
Yeah.
So why does decreasing the amount of extraction that we engage in mean that the North has less motivation to go in and take these resources?
It's not about the motivation. I'd say there's probably always some motivation, but we are creating constraints that allow imperialism to happen.
I wouldn't say there's the same motivation. I would say there's more motivation. If Saudi Arabia is all of a sudden, we're not going to extract oil anymore, the United States is not going to be okay with that. How do you make the United States care less about these types of motivations?
Well, the point is that the U.S. or other global imperialist powers are going to try to extract resources either way. I create a check against that because the case explains that it is these developing countries' policies that let the global North come in and get their influence, which is exactly the problem.
Okay, so what do you do? What do you do to solve it? You leave them in the ground, right? You leave resources in the ground.
Yeah.
What does that do?
We severely limit resource extraction.
What does that do?
Specific action is environmental rights. So the first argument, Gonzalez 3, explains that this is bottom-up action that allows people to resist the imperialism. So now no longer can these northern companies and northern countries
explain to me what this bottom-up process is to resist imperialism.
As in, when people feel that there's environmental destruction, they can challenge these policies that are enabling such destruction.
Is this local populations?
Yes.
Why would they be interested in doing so?
Because their homes are being destroyed, their environment's being destroyed, their basic livelihoods are being destroyed.
Okay, where is that?
That's in Gonzalez 3. That explains and enables them to challenge the oppression.
Sure.
The reason this stops imperialism is that it is domestic policies that allow these countries to come in. So if we change those domestic policies, we create resistance. Freire explains that is the most important impact to equality, because even if it doesn't work, we are now creating a system where the oppressed no longer model the oppressor, so they have at least a chance of maintaining an equal system.
So let's talk about your standard. I don't really understand what are impacts and what are not impacts. Could you clarify that a little bit?
Sure. Anything that impacts some countries having more privileges or rights than other countries. It's about disparities in the global system.
Okay, so you talk about individuals having rights. Why does that apply in the same context to governments having rights in comparison?
Sure, so that's what I was explaining earlier. That is these countries' domestic policies that are allowing these imperialist powers to come in and take advantage. So if citizens can challenge their country's domestic policies, they can challenge the conditions that allow for imperialism to wreak havoc on these countries.
Okay. And can you explain to me what the modeling argument is?
Yeah, this is the second argument, which explains that development is a Western-dominated process. So when countries extract resources, they're not becoming free or equal in the system. They're just becoming more Western and becoming trapped into the system responsible for the rights violations in the first place. Henry goes on and further is explaining that it's a rigged game because they think they can have economic growth, but they don't actually because the system is always structured so that the North will benefit more than the South.
Okay. I'll start.